Hey, do you remember when, just a little while ago, the DPRK was accused of having nuclear suicide bombers, even though the supposed evidence for them completely contradicted their claim? And that, in the end, these guys were actually what are called liquidators. Their job was to clean up radiation spills. Guess who actually did have nuclear suicide bombers? The United States. Special Atomic Demolition Munitions. This was the name of the weapons given to specific Navy SEALs that were trained to carry a nuclear bomb on their backpack, go to targets, set it up, and then blow them up. That's right. During the Cold War, the United States had nuclear suicide bombers that they were planning to use against the Soviet Union. According to a report that was published by Foreign Policy, there's information in there that shows that Dwight D. Eisenhower knew the United States could not beat the Soviet Union in a war. It's literally detailed in there how they could not win and how this was what they felt was a legitimate tactic for fighting the Soviet Union. Special paratroopers, underwater divers, all kinds of, kind of Navy SEAL, tactics were designed to carry these what were nuclear suitcases, or in this case, backpacks, in order to get to targets of specific infrastructure and particular targets of importance. Now here's some of that documentation. In the event that communist forces launched a limited non-nuclear attack, the president would have to choose between defeat at the hand of a superior conventional force or staggeringly disproportionate and potentially suicidal strategic nuclear exchange that would kill hundreds of millions of people. The point of all this was to develop the SAMD. Now this, 58-pound bomb that a soldier could carry on his back, the point was to make it very maneuverable to get it through the battlefield to specific targets and then just, blow the living hell out of it. The point of it was to be a lower casualty weapon that was intended to do more damage to infrastructure, supplies, the kind of thing like that. According to records, the men who were going to be carrying these weapons, should they ever be used, underwent extensive training, sometimes 8 to 12 hours a day. Their job was to get these weapons to the location that they were specified for and detonate it. This pretty much meant at the cost of their own lives, which means these men signing up, or were assigned depending on what the situation was, were pretty much intended to be suicide bombers. And they had nuclear weapons. These men, for all intents and purposes, were nuclear suicide bombers. After 1989, these weapons were considered obsolete and the training ceased to exist. Basically, the Energy Department and the Department of Defense felt that this was no longer a viable tactic. By then they had developed more sophisticated nuclear weapons to carry out particular objectives. I think it's very interesting that this shows that there was almost a kind of desperation tactic that the U.S. Army wanted to use against the Soviet Union. I think this shows that despite the narrative that we're fed by modern historians, or, well, historians for the entire time, the U.S. war machine was not an invincible juggernaut that feared nothing from the Soviet Union and knew it could win no matter what. In truth, in conventional warfare, the United States knew it would lose. Eisenhower deliberately created this tactic in order to deal with the fact that in a conventional stand-up war, they were going to lose against communist forces. But the final, very enjoyable aspect of all of this for me is the fact that despite the ridiculous claim that the DPRK had nuclear suicide bombers, really, the U.S. had them decades before in an attempt to deal with an army they knew they couldn't beat. Thank you for watching. Please comment and rate the video. If you liked it, hit subscribe or check out some of these other great videos. If you wish, share it on social media. While you're at it, why don't you follow me on Twitter? And if you got time, go on over to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available.